This video is going to be one of several that will feature to be watched ahead of the October 1st class. And these videos taken together are really a slice of some examples of how we find and clean and utilize data in real world contexts. And, I will not be with you for the vast majority of exercises that involve you gathering data, should you continue to use GIS in your life. And so the hope is that, many of the tips and tricks we've learned in previous weeks and this week and the next, you'll be able to apply as you sort of find and identify new sites of information. But I do want to make sure, at least with a couple videos, that I'm showing you some very practical real-world examples that you will likely visit regularly or could visit regularly for your work as a planner. And so that's what this first video is going to be about, is how you pull data directly from the census, both the information and the geography, to analyze in GIS. Now, disclaimer, I know you guys are learning an element of this in your quantitative methods class through the R programming language and how to use tidy census. That is a very efficient, very neat, very clean, and very solid way to gather large pieces of information from the census and analyze them. My hope is that those of you who are into that will follow the next thread in your rabbit hole and explore sort of how to incorporate GIS in R and really take that tool to its extents. But I also know that R is not for everyone. Some people struggle with it as a programming language and maybe want to have more of a direct interface with how to pull data from the census, more like a consumer would in a sense. And so that's kind of what I want to show you today. Like, what if you had to go to data.us.gov and Tiger shapefiles and find and download data? How would you do it? What might it look like when it comes back to you? How could you then play around with it in Excel and other platforms to make it usable for you in ArcGIS? So we're going to look at two main resources. The first we'll look at is the data itself. And that's going to be from data.census.gov. And after that, we're going to go to something called Tiger shapefiles. Should have had that on its opening page. And Tiger shapefiles, you can Google it to get here. That's more like the geography. So Tiger is geography, data.us.gov is the actual information. Now, this used to be a resource called American Fact Finder. Some of the changes in this new portal can be a bit wonky. This may take a second, the way it's structured, to get used to and be comfortable. But what I want to show you is just some quick, clean tips and tricks for how you might interface or start interfacing with data.census.gov, so you can pull data down in a fashion that's useful for you in ArcGIS. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you will come to this main page, how I like to start is I just click right here in the blank box, and I'll select Advanced Search. Now, when you get here, before you do anything else, let's just walk through the orientation, and in particular, what's going on under Browse Filters. We have topics, we have geography, and we have years, surveys, and codes. Likely you will rarely ever focus on the bottom two, and you may never really even use years. The top two is probably as a, quote-unquote daytime or occasional user of the census. This is where you're going to need to derive your information. Topics will help you browse through the various demographic and economic elements that the census records. Geography will help you pin down the geographic lens through which you want to analyze that. Are you interested at a very granular block or census tract level? Do you want to pull data down for the entirety of a metropolitan statistical area? Only you will know how you want to structure that as you proceed with your analytics. You may do years, and years really is best as a mechanism to filter between whether you're going to be using the decennial census, right? The actual count of population that occurs every 10 years, versus the American Community Survey, right? The 1-year survey that pulls down more detailed information but isn't a true count. So if you get some sense of what you're going to want, right? Or better yet, if you're not entirely sure and you want to see what's available to you, pop through Browse, right? You can click on the various categories, see some of the elements that will be available to you, and every time you click on something, as I'll show you in a second, a series of tables will pop up for you to preview. But you can also come in and start to search keywords here under Find a Filter, right? This is maybe if you have a sense of what you want. Now I'm going to want to do sort of race and ethnicity. So I search race and ethnicity, or I search race, find it here. You can see right when you click on something, it opens up as a filter, and I'll come to search. Actually, let me go back right there. Because after I do that, I wanted to say I got my race and ethnicity, and then the next thing I want to do is maybe pick a geography. And I'm going to show you in a minute another sort of medium, another forum which you can accomplish the same thing. But I want you to know all the sort of pathways to get through data.us.gov. So if you pick geography, it's the same thing. You browse for what you want. Now I want some tracts. I'm going to want tracts in Philadelphia, so I got to go through Pennsylvania. This is something I've noticed about data.census.gov. It takes sort of a hot second to get through this sort of page right here. I could download all of the tracts for Pennsylvania if I want, but I'm really going to want to come to Philly. I'm going to give it a second to load, and then once it loads, I should see the all census tracts in Philadelphia, and if I don't, I'll just use the little search icon that appears next to it to sort of move my way through. It's just kind of processing all the various options, the 400 or however many rough census tracts that would be at my disposal in the city of Philadelphia. So there I got all my census tracts, 2 filters, race and ethnicity, all census tracts. It's going to show me sort of the most relevant tables that it thinks would be useful to me. And so the top one that's going to pop out that I'm going to want here is the Hispanic and Latino and not Hispanic Latino by race. And so I'll pick that, and it's going to take me to what the table might look like. So we're almost there. Now this is a visualization, right? So you see your type of demographic that you're looking at. You've got the the various census tracts over here on the x-axis, and this would be fine if maybe we were looking at bigger geographies, like if you just wanted to quickly see states or cities, but probably without a map, to anyone but the most savanti of the savanti of us, nobody knows what a census tract 1.01 Philadelphia is or where it would be. And so it's actually by clicking on this. And this is, I think, what I mean when I say that data.census.gov, it's just designed sort of weird, to get you to what would have been a more helpful visualization. You have to take all these steps. Because the moment you say customize table, you're here. And suddenly this is much easier, right? I can select pieces and elements of this. I can come back into geography and get rid of census tracts and pick something else. I could change my topic the same way. I could change my year. And more importantly, I can come here and I can hit download when I'm ready. And when you do that, it's going to pop up, right? You're downloading 2020 data, a CSV, bing, bada, boom. Download now. And right here, right, it's popped down to the bottom. I've now got a CSV that is coming towards me that's going to give me my tabular data. Now, you're looking at sort of my Mac-based interface. I don't know what your Windows is going to look like. Pretty sure you just double-click or right-click if you want to uncompress a zipped file. And so I'll do that, and it'll open it for me. And I can see the folder has 3 sort of component parts that come in it. Looks like a whole bunch of messy nonsense noise. Really all I need to focus on here, though, is this first one, right? The P2 data with overlays. And so I'm going to open this, and this is my actual data, right? Where, as I always tell you to focus on first, look at the rows, and you could see by sort of moving down and opening columns and such, these are representative. Each one is an individual census tract. And as we'll see in a second, when it's easier to visualize, it's better just to sort of click on this column and I can see the changing values up here. Each of my attributes is telling me some element about race and ethnicity that's being recorded. Now, I have Excel. Some of you will have Excel. Others of you will use numbers. Some of you may want to download a platform called OpenOffice, right? There's several different ways to visually look at a CSV. Something like R, right? You can sort of process this on the fly without ever having to visually look at it. But some of you may need that, right? I certainly always found this to be a craving of mine, is wanting to see my data and see how it was structured. And so I opened the CSV here. And I think the other reason that's valuable to me is that if I'm only using several fields, I may not need to bring in all of this information right away to ArcGIS. And so what I'm going to do is a couple steps. I'm going to highlight the second row. I'm going to come over to here and pick wrap text. Again, it may be oriented in a different place if you're using Excel for Windows or OpenOffice or whatnot. But even doing that suddenly opens these up, and I can start to see, okay, these are the columns that I'm really looking for. And maybe what I'll start to do is highlight, right, a few, right? I'm going to want total. I'll want Hispanic and Latino. I'll want white alone. That's white, non-Hispanic, non-Latino. Same thing, black, non-Hispanic. I'll pick American Indian. I'll pick Asian. And we could keep doing sort of more, Hawaiian Pacific Islander, 2 or more races, other race. But we'll keep it sort of, with a relatively simple number of categories, and then we'll sort of create one that says other race in a second. And so highlighting the ones that I'm going to analyze, any of the others that I don't really need for my analysis, right now I could delete. Right, come on up here, drag myself all the way over, hold Shift, delete these columns. And the cool thing is, right, that the top row, that's going to be the field name, right? GOID with an underscore, name, P2001N, right? Following that format that Arc is comfortable with. No spaces, simple, limited number of characters, right? These would not be good headers. These would trip up ArcGIS. But I can start to manually change this for my visual eyes. Hey, this means total, right? This means Hispanic and Latino, and I'll say Hisplat as a quick symbol, right? This could be white, this could be black, this could be American Indian, this could be Asian. This is already GOID and name. I no longer need this field, right? This isn't a census tract. It sort of doesn't fit in with the other rows. It was a label, and I can get rid of it. And now I'm ready to go, right? My top row is a header with the names of my columns. Each record is a census tract, and this tells me my information. And so what I like to do is come in and save this. I save as a separate CSV, just so I kind of have a record, that's named a little bit smoother. So I'm going to save it in my desktop as a CSV. Make sure you do that in your file format. And I'll call that, demographic data. And there, I've got my I, right? I've got my information. So the next thing that we are going to do is pop on over to Tiger Shapefiles. So if I have my I, right, my information, my attributes, I now need to get my G, right? I need to get the geography that matches up. I downloaded data at the tract level, and therefore, so that thing that sounds like an airplane flying overhead, my crazy washing machine just decided to make this horrific sound. Perhaps you don't hear it, and I just sound like a crazy man. But yeah, if you hear it, that's what that is. But the G, right, I need the geography. And it needs to align with whatever you just downloaded. I pulled tracts, and so let me get tracts. If you're looking at cities, you want cities. If you're looking at counties, you want counties. And we'll see when we look at the data, there's going to be something called a GOID, right? These entity codes that we can join. And sometimes, like the example I'm setting up for you, the join isn't immediate. There's slight differences between the way they're structured. One's a text, one's a number. One has more characters, but I want to show you how we look for patterns when we make our joins that would allow us to actually execute them in this example. There's one more thing we're not going to do here, but for those of you that want to dive further, Tiger shapefile data, like Tiger line data, also has this sub field called the Tiger line with selected demographic and economic data. And all this are much larger, as you can see by the size, geodatabases, right? You can download every state, you could download every county, you go down and download every block group in a state, every census tract. And all this is going to give you is like all of the geographies for a given area with a ton of demographic information attached. But it's going to be structured much more like that crazy file we just opened in Excel, right? The names of fields are going to use sort of those 4 or 5 letter codes, and you're going to need to sort of do a relationship creation next to an alias data set so that you're visualizing and viewing kind of, what it actually is and not what the field is named. So this is really only for those that want to dive in a little bit deeper and kind of see what other products are available. But we're going to focus really here on Tiger Line and shapefiles. So pop on here, you're going to pick the year you're looking at, or 2020. Go to the web interface. You could go to sort of the FTP archive if you're a little bit more exploratory. And really here, right, is where you're just visualizing up and down the various types of geographies you might need. Bing, bada, boom, I've got my census tracts. I'll submit it. It's going to pull the entirety of for a state. I'm going to do a little technique behind the scenes before the next video because we're going to cut this one in two so that I'm just looking at Philadelphia. But the first thing that's going to come to you is sort of the entire state, and then you could either cut that down or sort of join to it as you will. So I'll hit download. You'll see it coming along here in the bottom. Bing, bada, boom. That's what we're going to work with in sort of a second through ArcGIS, and I'll kind of pick up the next video with what they look like in Arc, how we sort of join them so that we can complete this cycle.